Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Business Inspections Housing and Zoning Committee for today, which is February 28th. I've been joined by council members Chavez, Rainville, Osman, and Chugtai, and Ellison as well, which is all of the members of the committee. We'll start with our consent agenda, which is item 6, our liquor license approvals, and 7, which are the renewals. Item number 8 is amending the license fee schedule related to the maximum fees for a Class A motor vehicle services. Item 9 are appointments to the Workforce Board. 10 are grant applications to the state for youth employment and training services. Item number 11 is accepting grants from the State Department of Economic Development as well as the Met Council in Hennepin County for environmental remediation. Item number 12 is the Met Council's Livable Community Grant Awards. This is also accepting grants from various sources, mainly for housing projects in the city. Item number 13 is approving an increase of awards under our ESGCV rapid rehousing recommendations and our joint powers agreement. Item 14 is a rezoning for Mr. Baylor on Bryant Avenue North. Item number 15 is a rezoning and streetification for Exeter Marshall for a number of properties on Marshall Avenue Northeast. Item 16 is an alley vacation between Elliott and Chicago Avenues. Item 17 is an alley vacation at 601 Washington Avenue North. Item 18 are referring to staff the various 2040 items that we will be working on in the next couple of months. Item 19 is a referral to staff with regard to the regulation of tobacco dealers. Item 20 is setting a public hearing for host approval for bonds at 236 Clifton. Item 21 is setting a public hearing for a bond issuance at 1300 Olson Memorial Highway. And item number 22 is setting a public hearing as well for the project at 200 Central. Are there any items anyone would like to pull from the agenda on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll move the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. I will note that we will have a staff presentation on the Great Streets Gap financing loan for Dreamland at 38th and 3rd Avenue South at the end of the agenda, but we'll begin with our public hearing agenda, starting with item number 1, which is a on-sale liquor, no live entertainment Sunday sales for Bulldog. And I see Mr. Olson is here. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members. My name is Joseph Olson. I'm an inspector with Business Licenses and Consumer Services. Today I'm presenting an application from Boludo, owned by Boludo Uptown LLC. This restaurant is located at 2935 Girard Avenue in Ward 10. The applicant is requesting an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales, no live entertainment license, as well as a sidewalk cafe license. The business will be operating Monday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. and on the interior, and on the exterior, they'll be operating Sunday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Friday and Saturday until 11 p.m. The notices were sent to property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to the Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association and Council Member Chugtai. We have not received any feedback from the community. There have been no complaints, 311 calls, or police calls associated with this business. There are no operating conditions or other issues. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an on-sale liquor license with Sunday sales and no live entertainment, as well as a sidewalk cafe license. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I'll stand for any comments or questions.
Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Olson? Seeing none, thank you so much for your report. We'll open up the public hearing on item number 1. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Chugtai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of this item.
Item number 1 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 2, Ms. Steester's item, which is Broken Clock Brewing Co-op. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Goodman and committee members. My name is Christina Steester from Licenses and Consumer Services. I'm presenting an application from Broken Clock Brewing Cooperative, owned by Broken Clock Brewing Cooperative. Their address is 1712 Marshall Street in Ward 3. The applicant is requesting an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales tap room with general entertainment and off-sale malt liquor growler license. The hours of operation will be Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 12 p.m. to 1 a.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. They have indoor seating for 197. On February 3rd, 2023, 53 public hearing notices were sent to residents and property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Multi-unit buildings were posted. Notices were also sent to the Sheridan Neighborhood Association, the Northeast Minneapolis Chamber, and Council Member Rainville's office. We have received 23 comments from the community. All were in support of this application. There are no concerns from this location that council members should be made aware of. There have been no 311s and no police calls for service, as this location has not been open for business yet. The Licenses and Consumer Services Division recommends approval of an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales taproom license with general entertainment and off-sale malt liquor growler license. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I will stand for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steester. Are there any questions for staff on item number 2? Seeing none, thank you so much for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 2, which is an on-sale liquor tap room and off-sale malt liquor license for Broken Clock Brewing Company. I do have 2 people signed up to testify, Mr. Matheson and Mr. Thomas. You are welcome to step forward to speak now if you should so choose.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing us. Councilman Rainville, great to see you again. Thank you everyone else for hearing us out. I represent Broken Clock Brewing Cooperative. We've been in business since 2017, and thanks to the wonderful community, we have now been in a position where we need to expand our business, and that's why we're applying now to move to 1712 and open a larger tap room there. We've been in business since 2017 since day one as a community-owned business. Which means as a co-op, the community literally owns 100% of our business. And because of that, we've been in a wonderful position since 2017 to continue growth. I appreciate all of you hearing us out and hopefully approving us for this license as we can continue to grow and support our community. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Thomas, my neighbor. Thank you for being here, neighbor.
Thank you, Chairperson Gooden. My name is Dale Thomas. I am a 31-year resident of the Bryn Mawr neighborhood of Minneapolis. I have been a member owner of Broken Clock Brewing since before it became a brewery, and I found this to be an amazing community of people that were focused on doing something different in the community of brewing and tap rooms. And I'd like to assure the council that this is a family-friendly, community-focused group that allows people of every gender identity, racial makeup, and whatever their thoughts are to be involved, to be a part of this brewery. But we also allow anybody who wants to drop in to enjoy our space, and it's going to be the type of addition to the neighborhood, I think, that that the city of Minneapolis and Northeast will appreciate. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, Mr. Thomas. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm proud to make a motion for approval on this, and I do want to welcome you to the 3rd Ward. Thank you for working with our staff. I know it's been a long process, but we have everything in line, and you're going to be very, very successful. So thank you for your investment.
On the motion by Councilmember Rainville to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for being here today. We'll move on to item number 3, Tap In at 2618 Lowry Avenue North for a on-sale liquor with general entertainment and Sunday sales, and we will hear from our Director of Licensing, Ms. Lingo. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And committee members, I am Amy Lingo, Interim Manager for Business Licensing, presenting on behalf of Inspector Phil Cotterill. I am here on behalf of an application for Tap In, owned by Tap In LLC at 2618 Lowry Avenue North, which is located in the 4th Ward. The applicant is requesting an on-sale liquor license, general entertainment, Sunday sales with 2 a.m., which, if approved, would allow the applicant to provide patron dancing, literary readings, storytelling, live solo comedians, karaoke, amplified or non-amplified music by a DJ, any number of musicians, a group singing by the patrons, as well as patron dancing. The hours of operation requested are 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. daily. On November 7th, 2022, public hearing notices were sent to residents and property owners within 600 feet of the premises. Notices were also sent to Cleveland Neighborhood Association and Councilmember Vitaw. Due to the public hearing being rescheduled, notices were sent out again on January 20th, 2023. At this time, we have received 24 responses, 7 in support of the application, stating it is new, innovative, and a valuable addition to the community. 17 oppose this application, citing negative impact concerns, such as late-night activity, parking, and noise, due to the proximity of their homes to the proposed business. While many of the negative responses are not opposed to an on-sale per se, they are obviously concerned about the overall impact of the late-night hours and requested level of entertainment would have on the neighborhood. It should also be noted that the current on-sale liquor establishment directly across the street on Upton North does not operate after 11 p.m. This location is currently under construction, and there have been no significant 311 or business or police calls that can be attributed to the business. Due to the current business plan and the location's extreme proximity to residences, the License and Consumer Services Division recommends denial on an on-sale liquor license, general entertainment with Sunday sales, and 2 a.m. license. However, discussions are now in place with the applicant regarding amending the hours of operation and level of entertainment. We will also discuss adding conditions to the license that will address the concerns of the community, as well as aid in the future success of Tap In. We respectfully request the public hearing be continued one cycle so we may continue that discussion. This concludes my presentation, and I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Lingo? I do want to note that I'm not sure what the appetite of the committee is to postpone this at all. And so we're going to move forward with the public hearing today and see what the will of the committee is after the public hearing. See if there's any questions from anyone for Ms. Lingo. Okay, great. I have a number of people signed up. I'll just read your names out loud. You know if you signed up. You are welcome to just come forward, line up, hang out in your seat till someone else speaks. Mr. Webley, Ms. Weber, Ms. Rowe, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Cabrera, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Cressy. I think I might have that right. I'm not positive. If I did not do justice by your name, you are welcome to correct me. You must be Mr. Webley.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Goodman. Thank you, county members. I am the founder of Tap In. I just wanted to thank you guys again for taking the time. I wanted to first start this conversation by reaffirming sort of our intentions with Tap In. I know that, and I want to apologize to the community, if any information prior to today was misrepresented in terms of our intentions. Jeremiah and Councilman Goodman, this is my first time in front of you guys. We own a similar establishment down the street from this current location called New Rules. It operates in the same capacity with a 2 a.m. license. Our intentions with Tap In are no different than what they have been for New Rules, which is to create a really high-end product that Northsiders can have some pride in and create a safe space for them to convene and have food and beverage. The license, I just wanted to sort of dispel a few myths out there. While we are applying for a 2 a.m. license, our intent is not to operate a bar till 2 a.m. every night. Following precedents of our current location, New Rules on Lowry, that location's standard operating hours, we close at around 11 o'clock daily. We know that there are occasions where we have Shark Tank events and different political events that might require us to go past 11 till 2 a.m., which is why we requested the 2 a.m. license, not that our intent is to be open to 2 a.m. daily. Also, to want to note, we've operated our license at New Rules since 2017, and I would say we've had a pretty good consistent track record with being good neighbors and stewards of the license in the neighborhood. This particular building, we put in upwards of $1.3 million to make this project come to fruition. We really want this to be a beacon of light for the north side. And again, we just appreciate you guys for taking the time to hear us out.
Thank you so much. Perfect timing. Ms. Weber, or anyone else who had signed up to speak, you are welcome to come forward. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Francine Freeman Weber. Oh my God, I went to my maiden name. Chris Webley. My family, my husband and I own the Park Tavern in St. Louis Park, and I own Milton's in Crystal. We are a family-oriented restaurant. We're very involved with the community, and we also are a part of Tap In by way I will be doing the kitchen. And so I just wanted to support Chris, and I would not be involved with if I had any concerns. So this is more just a sign of character. My daughter has designed it. She's worked for a marketing firm. She is bringing a certain element to it. So all of these events that they plan on doing is the betterment of whatever it is their passion as young artists, etc. So I guess that's kind of all I wanted to say. Coming with our, Chris has my husband, who is very successful in his business, and so am I. He consults with him continually. Neither of our businesses have any issues with anything in all the years we've been open. And it's about community, so. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for taking time to come down today. Kelly Rowe, welcome.
Hi, my name is Kelly Rowe. I live within steps behind Tap In, and I'm here to actually say that I don't support the license. This is not a neighborhood for this type of establishment. It is a neighborhood of families that work 6-7 days a week with school-aged kids, people who walk their pets late at night. We don't want to have to worry about trying to find a parking spot when we get home, as in Tappan has 2 parking spots, one being handicapped accessible. We do not have a establishment that we don't want to have to worry about security. Also, there have been 311 calls against it because it is still not shoveled after the last storm, although his parking where the construction people are is beautifully plowed. We can have to walk down the middle of the street currently to if we want to catch the bus. I also want to say that what was put in the zoning package for you all is not what was proposed to us as people when he asked us for our support. There was no alcohol mentioned. There was nothing of the sort. We would not have approved it because we remember when the essay was there. We do not support this at all. Along with that, he came 2 hours ago asking us to send emails to the inspectors for our change in it because he knows he misrepresented himself. And we all felt we needed to be here today after showing up 2 hours ago at our house. So we're not asking you to completely turn it down. We go with the inspectors and ask for the restrictions put on him. We understand that there was a lot of money put into it, so we're not asking you to completely turn it down. But at full entertainment, you can't soundproof outside music. I can hear the construction players' radio when I walk by there. So we're just asking for a reconsideration on how it's done because we just don't trust him at this point because what he's told us is not the truth, and we don't trust him.
Thank you. The next speaker would be Lily Johnson. Ms. Johnson, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lily Johnson. My husband and I own Tootie's on Lowry, which is right across the street from Tap In. I first want to say that this really has nothing to do with us having any kind of bias about a competitor across the street. As a matter of fact, we know through our 34 years of experience of being at Tootie's that another business across the street could very likely bring us more business and be a good thing for us. So it's not about that. when Mr. Webley came around to the neighborhood and us to ask about rezoning, he gave us an entire proposal, which didn't at that time really specify that he wanted to be open late night. It was more of a check-in for people with entrepreneur ideas and people to share ideas and have maybe a snack or a craft cocktail, something like that. And we were hesitant, but we know that a lot of neighbors did go along with the rezoning request. And later, after he put up the signs, we started wondering if his request was a little bit misleading or a lot misleading. One of our dishwashers came up to us and said that, and he was 17, he lives in the house exactly across the street, said that he had run into Mr. Webley, who told him there would soon be a nightclub there on the corner. And we kind of laughed it off at first, thinking that's impossible. But as it turns out, with the 2 a.m. license and general entertainment and liquor and all the rest of it, it appears from that conversation and others we've heard from other people that have talked with him that that is, in fact, the intention. And we're very concerned. We're concerned about the crime because it's a vulnerable neighborhood, and we close early, and we just think it's not the right fit.
Thank you for being here. The next speaker is Ms. Cressy. Did I get that wrong? You have beautiful handwriting.
And actually, I have for Dory also. Dory Cabernet, Dorimar.
Yeah, yes.
I have her phone with her statement, and that's what I'm reading.
Okay, great.
Okay. It's saying, we strongly oppose and object. This is speaking for the Beloff families that we were flooded out back December 28th, and he was our landlord. Chris Webley was our landlord, and we all been displaced. And it says, we strongly oppose and object to any alcoholic beverage licensing for Christopher Webley and any of the parties or entitles he works with or under. We question his intention in the managing and selling of liquor to the public when he and his involved parties did not, in good faith, have any intention to properly manage the Bell Lofts building we lived in, along with our families. Least of all, properly compensate for the emotional and mental stress and the flood travesty has caused, along with all the damages to our personal property within those units. Yet somehow he was able to launch openings of properties in other areas, even other countries, and now wants to operate a business selling liquor. We don't agree with the fact that he has monetary funds to do such, but doesn't want to make financial reparations to us first. We stand with the nonprofit organization It Takes a Village, Minnesota, and documenting MN and our neighbors from the historic Bell Lofts in the objection of this pending application for license. Also, we have not yet received full security deposits. So in this situation, it's just not fair and to us that he would get another license for anything else at this point in time. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, ma'am. And then that was Ms. Cabrera also, so then we'll move on to Sammy Harris. That's him also. That's him also. Okay, no, that's okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to testify on this issue? Anyone?
Can I check that the room is also there?
Council Chair Goodman, there's one other person who signed up who may be.
They are welcome to speak now. Come forward, state your name and address for the record if you're here to speak.
Hi, my name is Michael Bungham. Thanks for having me today. I'm at 3215 Lowry Avenue North, 2 properties down. And I'll keep it brief. The concern, if we have one, is the misrepresentation of the license that's proposed to us for the zoning. I believe everyone in our community was very excited at the prospect of having any business. We've been really looking at the eyesore of the SBWay for a very long time. So when Mr. Webley approached us, we were very excited about having a business there. However, I think it would have been a very different characterization if someone had told us there would be an on-sale liquor license hearing about that establishment 6 months later, when we were told it was going to be a coffee shop and perhaps a community art space. So I don't believe we heard the correct versioning of what was to be put into that space, and I don't think we would have signed off on the rezoning if that was the case. Given that where we are, I believe I have the same position as many of the other people. I'm concerned about late night. I'm concerned about the restrictions on the days and times of the alcohol sales and what goes on there. And I'd like for that to be reconsidered for this owner of this property or future owners of that property, given the zoning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record now. Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Dianca, D as in David, Y-O-N-Y-C-A, Conley Rush. I am the CEO and founder of It Takes a Village, Minnesota. The reason I'm speaking is because I have been, along with Documenting MN and a couple other organizations, been working with the families that were at Bell Lofts that lost everything 3 days after Christmas. The communication with Mr. Webley has been, for lack of a better term, obsolete. These families are still trying to find housing. They're still trying to gather their thoughts. A lot of them are suffering from PTSD. That night when we showed up, there were families outside freezing in the cold, trying to figure out where they were going to go. The reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to talk about accountability and responsibility. We are talking about giving him a license to have liquor, to serve to individuals. This same individual did not do what he was supposed to with 21 families. That adds up to about 61 people that lived in his unit, that had faith in him to fix this place up, that paid rent to him, and just wanted a better life. So we're talking about integrity here. He still does not contact any of the residents. The selective few that he does contact, they still have not gotten their security deposits back. They were supposed to be given back on February 24th. As of this date, they still have not been given back. We have to go through Attorney General Keith Ellison and all kinds of stuff. I would like you guys to keep that into consideration when it comes to integrity and giving someone a liquor license. I speak on behalf of all of the residents of Bell Lofts. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really want to thank everybody who came to give testimony. I even want to thank the applicant. I mean, when I'm talking to residents in North Minneapolis, economic development is something that's really important. People want to see that they can live, work, play in their neighborhood. That's certainly a priority. It's something that you've made a career of so far, and so I certainly want to commend that. But I think based on the testimony that I've heard today from neighbors, and I know this isn't strictly in my ward, I think that there's a lot of questions around trust. I think a lot of questions around a lot of bridges that need to be built between the community. Usually, when we have something like this coming up in North Minneapolis, people are 100% in. They want to see this happening. They come out, they say, please, yes, another food establishment, another coffee shop, another business, another place to get employed. And so to have a number of residents come out today and say, we're not sure about this, that certainly resonates with me. At the danger of speaking on behalf of Councilmember Vital, I think it resonates with Councilmember Vital as well, whose ward this is in. And so, I don't think that this is the end-all, be-all, but I do think that you're going to have to re-engage the neighborhood, build some trust. And I also want to acknowledge the Bell Loft residents. While I don't think that we could, we cannot base a denial based on that incident alone, but based on what we've seen from staff, based on the testimony we've heard from neighbors, that's the basis for the denial. But I do want to acknowledge that the Bell Loft residents came here today, and this is one of the few avenues that they felt they could talk directly to the committee and to the council about what happened in their experience in that building. And so I just want to thank them for showing up. With that, Madam Chair, I'm going to recommend denial of this application, and I trust that Mr. Webley will re-engage with staff and take another stab at it in the next couple of months. So,
Mr. Hanson, maybe I could ask you a couple of questions. I suppose I could ask Ms. Lingo as well. Maybe I should ask Ms. Lingo, actually.
We'll see who can answer.
Okay, it is her job, so I think she's good at answering. A denial today does not prohibit Mr. Webley from coming back with a different plan, is that correct?
That is correct.
And a denial today would mean that he could or could not come back with a plan that's exactly the same?
We would have the same position.
Which would be denial.
The staff review of this report, of this application, is to not support the 2 a.m. license in the general entertainment.
Okay, so the staff's not saying we don't want to see you succeed with some sort of food and beverage in this location. We're just simply saying this is not the plan that the neighborhood is supportive of. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Are there other comments or questions with regard to Councilmember Ellison's motion? Seeing none on the motion to deny the license, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item has been denied, and I would urge Mr. Webley and his team to consider maybe what you heard today, and what you heard from Councilmember Ellison was, we want to see you do something, but we want to see you work with the neighbors to figure it out too. And that would be really helpful because we do want to have businesses obviously on Lowry, and I think that would be a big benefit. Mr. Fussy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would simply advise the committee to direct my office to prepare findings reflecting this determination.
Okay, thank you. I will ask staff to draft findings noting that the staff recommendation was also denial. So I would guess that there is something in the staff report, but to go further and have additional findings based on today's public hearing would be helpful. On the motion to ask staff to draft findings, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is approved. We thank you all for being here. We will then move on to item number 4, which is the Home Investment Partnership American Rescue Plan funding allocation, and I will turn this over to Ms. Geisler. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Good afternoon. I am Amy Geisler, manager of the residential finance team in CPED, and I'm going to provide a brief introduction here on this staff report and then turn it over to our consultant in a moment. Today we'll be sharing information on a planning process related to an award of home ARP funds from the federal government that the city received from HUD. HUD requires a very specific planning and engagement process in order to utilize these funds. And so we engaged a consultant through a procurement process, ICF International, to assist us with that work. We're fortunate that ICF is a HUD-approved technical assistance provider for this home ARP program, and they've also been assisting the state of Minnesota with a similar process. Because this work represents an amendment to the city's consolidated plan, CPED and finance staff have been working collaboratively on this effort. Today we'll be sharing the results of the needs assessment and consultation process that was done, and we'll return to the committee on March 14th with a presentation on the proposed allocation plan itself. And with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie Carl with ICF to give you an overview of the program and the work that we've done to date.
Ms. Carl, welcome.
Thank you so much. So we'll get right into the meat of it. So I'm Stephanie Carl. I'm a lead community development specialist with ICF International Consulting Firm. And I work 100% in the Home ARP funding area. So Home ARP is Home American Rescue Plan. That's what ARP stands for. It's a federal stimulus program that started in 2021. It's a one-time allocation, and it has to be expended by 2030. And the city received an allocation of a little bit over $9.6 million. And as mentioned in Amy's introduction, in order for us to get the funding here in the city, we have to go through a comprehensive consultation process, and how we use the funds is informed by that consultation process and the needs assessment, looking at housing, shelter, and services. So Home ARP funds can be used for a broad range of housing and supportive services, and it can create new standalone projects, or it can be combined with other Home ARP allocations and other funding programs in general. So this presentation will cover the gaps and needs in the city, those most in needs of home ARP services, and opportunities for addressing those needs with these funds. So who are the funds for? Home ARP notice is very specific about the intention of the funding. It's for 4 qualifying populations, the first of which being individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Qualifying population 2 is individuals and families at risk of experiencing homelessness. God bless you. And qualifying population 3 is individuals and family members, households fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And the final qualifying population is more of a broad qualifying population of other populations for whom supportive services or assistance would prevent homelessness or who are at the greatest risk of housing instability. This is really looking at households that are on limited time assistance, previously homeless, and low income that are significantly cost burdened. So you know who it's for, what can you do with the funds. There are 5 eligible activities that we can use the Home ARP funds for, the first of which is the construction development of affordable rental housing. The second of which is the tenant-based rental assistance, paying ongoing rental assistance, security deposit assistance, and utility assistance. Third is supportive services, and that's ongoing case management to help to provide housing stability. And the fourth of which is acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter, and this is very specific to the shelter stock itself, so it can be used for development of the actual building, but it cannot be used to pay for the ongoing maintenance or the program staff for the ongoing operations. Finally, nonprofit operating and capacity building assistance is the 5th eligible activity, and that can be used in conjunction with the other 4 eligible activities so that a nonprofit taking on a new federal funding source can have the support and admin and overhead in order to do it correctly and follow the compliance. One thing that's very specific about Home ARP is that they allow for preferences. And preferences really relate to the qualifying populations on the previous slides, where you can really use a preference as a tool to fill in gaps for the qualifying populations in the city so they can get priority access to Home ARP projects. And Minneapolis may establish regional preferences for Home ARP assistance based on local needs and based on the allocation plan. So there is a comprehensive planning process that HUD requires before you can get the money. Of course, federal funds, right? So we're all trying to get to the end of this arrow here with a HUD-approved Home ARP allocation plan. We've completed the consultation meetings and the needs assessment and gaps analysis, and I can give you an overview of what has occurred in those 2 areas. So we are required to consult with a number of different consultation groups. You can see those on the slide here. I'll just name a few: homeless services providers, domestic violence service providers, veteran groups, and organizations that serve or advocate for people with disabilities. There's a whole list of things that you have to consult with, and we did a comprehensive consultation where we hit all of the required, and in addition to that, also reached out to those with lived experience of homelessness and housing instability to get their feedback about the use of funds. So there was 2 methods by which we did the consultation, the first of which was we held 5 virtual listening sessions that they started with they were 1 hour in length, and we went over like a basic what Home ARP is used for, what can be used for, followed by a guided discussion where we collected both data and had an actual very vibrant discussion about what the gaps are in the city and how we could use these funds. We held those 5 virtual sessions between February 10th and February 16th, talking with over 29 organizations and 40 individuals. In addition to the virtual listening sessions, we also offered an alternative way by virtual survey, which was also translated into Somali, Spanish, and Hmong. And this survey was available between February 7th and February 23rd, and we received 26 responses from 18 organizations. To summarize all those things that had happened in one sentence, we recognize the need in all eligible areas of funding. So there's need across all of the eligible activities, but there was a recognized long-term need for continued development of affordable housing units, and the top need identified was affordable rental housing. While these consultations were happening, we were also digging deep into the data that was available for the city. There's a comprehensive draft allocation plan that lists all of the needs assessment and gaps analysis. I'm just going to highlight a few of the things here on these slides. One of which is for the point-in-time count, which is an annual count of those experiencing homelessness. Of the over 2,600 persons identified in the Minneapolis, Hennepin County's PID count, 94% were residing in emergency shelter or transitional housing shelter within city limits. And also for those experiencing homelessness, there's a racial disparity. This is something that is not new to you and not new to anyone in the nation. We're seeing this across the country. But for instance, individuals who identify or are Black or African American neighbors are experiencing homelessness at greater rates than our general population. So you can see in the graph here, I don't know if you guys can see in the graph here, but in the graph here, it shows that over 50% of those who identify as Black or African American are experiencing homelessness versus only being less than 20% of the general population. We're also seeing this disparities for our Native neighbors as well, or Indigenous neighbors as well. Turning our heads over to those who are renting, instead of those experiencing homelessness, 73% of renter households are below extremely low income or below 30% of area median income, and they are cost burden, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent. Going even further, more than 50% are severely cost burden or paying more than 50% of their income towards housing. So if any one of you guys are doing your budgets, you know if half your income is automatically gone because you're paying rent, when life happens, you don't have a lot of flexibility because over half your income is going to rent alone. The same racial disparity that we see in those experiencing homelessness are also seen in those cost burden and severely cost burden with our neighbors who identify as Black or African American and Indigenous being more cost burden than their percentage of those in the overall renter population. There's a general shortage of about 18,000 units affordable at that very low, below 30% AMI in Minneapolis. And the city is definitely working to try to fill that gap as quick as possible. And last year brought on board 196 new units, but 18,000 minus 200, still a significant gap there at that price point, and the gap is still wide. From our conversations and our survey, we received lots of consultation themes and patterns for each of the eligible activities, which I'll share with you briefly. So for affordable rental housing, as we saw in the gaps analysis, there's a real need for deeply affordable rental housing, specifically affordable for those at the 30% AMI and below that have a low barrier application process and possibly deep subsidies to go along with it. Also, really looking at flexible housing options. Just doing one-bedroom apartments might not always be the answer to end homelessness in the city, but exploring single-room occupancies or group homes that provide a different environment could be helpful in providing and diversifying your housing stock. The best practice of pairing with supportive services is really helpful to create stability. And project costs have increased from development to construction, and this funding could be used to fill in gaps that is needed to close current affordable housing projects. For supportive services were viewed to reduce housing instability and help households connect to the community. Services should be long-term, and that allows time for strong rapport building, that allows for better housing stability. Service funding was said to be shorter term, and it was harder to fund continuously, and harder to hire quality staff because of the financial uncertainty. Mental health wellness and substance use support are focused areas of supportive services where need is high, and programs should be community focused, meaning clients in the community itself. For tenant-based rental assistance, quick access to rental and utility assistance was identified as a need in order for households to remain stable in their living situations, and ongoing rental assistance can increase affordability of units, especially for lower income households. For non-congregate shelter, it was recognized there was not enough shelter beds for those experiencing homelessness in the city, and in lieu of long-term housing options, for those transitioning out of institutions like hospitals, mental health facilities, or jails, having an accessible bed is helpful in order to help transition out into the community. Also, in the current structure, it was brought to our attention that many youth from 18 to 24 are also experiencing homelessness in adult shelters, which was identified as not being ideal. So that is a summary of the funding, what we heard, what the surveys told us, what the community told us, and our next steps is the draft allocation plan will be posted today for public comment and will be open through March 15th. We'll also have another presentation back to this committee on March 14th, and then the final plan will be submitted to HUD so we can bring the $9.6 million into the city to start doing some great things. That's the end of my presentation.
Are there any questions for staff on this process? We had asked to have a process explanation today just so everyone knew what had happened so far. And as you heard, they'll post a draft plan and then we'll have it come back to us again. So I just want to see if there are any questions up until this point. If not, I'm going to open the public hearing because a public hearing is required on this portion of the project as well. So if without question, I will open the public hearing on item number 4, which is receiving public comments on the Home Investment Partnership American Rescue Plan allocation plan. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and move approval of the recommendations to move forward with the public plan being posted, and then we'll hear more feedback and have another public hearing in a couple of weeks. Are there any objections or comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Now we will move on to our quasi-judicial public hearing. Thank you for your patience, those who are here for that portion of our agenda. This is a variance appeal by Mr. Theroff on behalf of NP Broadway at 945 Broadway Street Northeast, and we will start with a presentation from staff. I also want to note Councilmember Payne has taken the time to sit through basically the whole meeting, so thank you, and he is here today in support of the business in his ward. And we will turn this over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Goodman, members of the committee. As noted, the application before you is an appeal of a variance denial at 945 Broadway Street Northeast. This is a parcel at the corner of Central Avenue Northeast and Broadway Street Northeast in Ward 1 of Northeast Minneapolis. The parcel is zoned I2 Medium Industrial District with the IL Industrial Living Overlay District, Built Form Corridor 6, and a future land use of production mixed use. The applicant's proposal is to expand an existing coffee shop into the neighboring tenant space. You can see the existing shop here in blue with the expansion over here highlighted in yellow. The existing space, 3,860 square feet with an expansion of 2,218 for a total of 6,078 square feet. The current zoning code limits food and beverage uses to 5,000 square feet in the I2 district. Staff had found and the Board of Adjustment agreed that there are not practical difficulties as are required for a variance to increase above 5,000 square feet. The Board of Adjustment did find that the proposal meets the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. The comp plan calls for allowing production and non-production uses in production mixed-use areas, and also to consider land use regulations that encourage adaptive reuse of industrial buildings. Staff found and the Board of Adjustment agreed that the proposal would not alter the essential character of the area and would not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of nearby properties, nor to the general health, safety, or welfare. Staff's recommendation is to uphold the decision of the Board of Adjustment by denying the appeal. And I am available for questions.
Are there any questions for staff? I guess the one question I have is, once we are complete with the 2040 work, would this be allowed as a right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my question. We will see if there are others. If not, I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 5. The appellant, in these processes, the appellant gets to speak first, and you get up to 10 minutes should you need that. We'll see if there's anyone else here on this item, and then we will make a determination as to what to do next. So welcome, Mark, right?
Yes, thank you, Chair Goodman. Members of the committee, I'm going to be very brief. There's a pretty extensive record here, and I've set forth almost all the information that I'd like you to consider in our written submission. I would like to highlight just 2 things. One, it was in relation to the question that Chair Goodman just put to staff. We've been informed that in the process of updating the zoning ordinance, staff have recognized that there was never an intention to apply this cap to a property like this that's no longer industrial in the way that this one has evolved. Both its zoning category is changing, getting sort of down-zoned, if you will, to production mixed-use 1, but also this 5,000-foot cap is being increased. The proposal is to increase it to 10,000 square feet. So the proposed use here would be well below that. Of course, that process still has to work its way through. Could be a number of months before that's finalized, assuming it does go through. So we're very hopeful to get this resolved sooner than that, so that this project can move forward. The only other comment I'd like to make is that recognizing that this is a variance situation, I just want to touch briefly on the practical difficulties, because that was the only issue that tripped us up until this point. As staff explained to you, it's kind of an unusual space. There are two areas that, while under the technical interpretation, they are seen as accessory to the food and beverage use, they're not used for what we would think of as food and beverage uses. One is an office that's 700 square feet that serves as the corporate office for all of the Spy House locations. It is not accessible by guests of the restaurant or any members of the public. And the other is a roastery, which is 500 square feet, which is where they have the equipment that roasts all of the coffee beans for the entire business, both online, retail, and all the coffee shops. This is also not accessible by members of the public. And if you take these two areas, this 1,200 square feet, even with the addition, we're below 5,000. So the practical difficulty that we have identified is that the current tenant and the current property owner sort of inherited this space with this configuration, and it's not practical to relocate those things somewhere else just to make this project move forward. Last comment, it was noted in the staff report that that was perhaps a situation created by the applicant, and I just want to underscore that this building was redeveloped by First and First. My client bought it years later, and the current, and Spy House was also owned by a different entity at the time. So both the applicant, if you will, the property owner, my client, and the tenant, Spy House, are new businesses to this space that did not create this odd configuration of the office and the roastery being co-located with the coffee shop. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll see if there's anyone else here to speak to this issue. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, see if Councilmember Payne has something he'd like to say before I make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this is just like the perfect textbook of what the challenge has been with all of the delays of the implementation of 2040. And I think that when we're looking at this through that lens of we're kind of in this middle ground of business as usual with very clear plans for our future, it just makes it, from a technical perspective, something that's a little bit challenging. But I think from a practical perspective, it's really clear that this is the type of businesses that we want to support in our community. And I actually have a number of entrepreneurs within the ward that are in similar places right now where their business models are really hinging on our land use getting implemented fully. And so it's really hard for a lot of these entrepreneurs to be stuck in limbo for so long with plans and maybe even financing lined up. So I'm hoping that we can get this resolved today.
Thank you, Councilmember Payne. Thank you for all your work on this. I am going to move to grant the variance appeal. I do want to say that I believe the findings have been met and that this is something unique to the property, not caused by the current owner or tenant. I also believe ultimately that the accessory uses being included with the size of the coffee shop and the roaster creates a practical difficulty in complying with the ordinance. So I'm going to direct staff to prepare findings to reflect that practical difficulties exist, and I want to just tell this story. I'm very familiar with your situation because my ex-husband owned a business, a retail business, that also shipped things, so they had a shipping operation and had an office. And there was nowhere in the city that they could move their business where all three of those things could exist. To have shipping, you had to be in industrial. To have retail, you had to be in commercial. And what did they do when they wanted to expand? They moved to Golden Valley. So I think we need to think through how we can be a little bit more small business friendly. There's no harm in having a coffee shop in a place where it is production because of the coffee shop, yet they want to have an office. We want them to have their office there. The alternative is Golden Valley, I suppose. So I do think that this makes sense, and I would agree that this is one of many things that could be cleared up fairly easily once we get through the completion of the 2040 process. So with that, are there any further comments or objections to the chair's motion? Seeing none, on the motion to approve the variance appeal, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for being here and for your patience. Our last item is a good news story. It is a Great Streets Gap financing loan for Dreamland at 38th and 3rd Avenue South. And I would invite Mr. Brisson up to give this report, and thank you for being willing to do this today.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Goodman and members of the committee. My name is Jason Brisson. I am a program coordinator with CPED Business Development, and today I am presenting a request for a $500,000 Great Streets Gap financing loan to the Cultural Wellness Center for the acquisition and/or redevelopment of 3800 3rd Avenue South, and authorizing a multi-jurisdictional agreement with Hennepin County to facilitate a TOD or transit-oriented development grant for the project. So a little bit about the borrower. The Cultural Wellness Center was a nonprofit created in 1996. They offer research-based classes, coaching, consulting, and certifications that support people, families, communities, and organizations in developing culturally based solutions to real-world problems. A little bit about the project entitled Dreamland on 38th. It is a renovation of a property. There will be 3.5 stories with ground floor retail, upper floor office and community space, and the current vision for the property is a rooftop gathering space, a commercial kitchen and cafe on the ground level floor, cultural wellness center offices, and a number of other uses. Very exciting project. So in terms of the financing, it's just over $8 million in total development costs. They have $2.7 million in current commitments. That includes the city's proposed $500,000 from the fiscal year 23 budget. The rest are coming from public, private, and philanthropic sources and individual contributions, which was nice to see. It leaves a current $5.3 million gap for the project, and to address that gap, approximately $7 million in current funding requests to public and philanthropic partners are in. Approximately 50% would be committed to the project, so there's about a $1.8 million remaining gap, assuming they're still seeking individual contributions as well. The project team is asking for approval from the city's loan commitment now to help catalyze some of the other funding sources, and so staff is recommending approval of the $500,000 Great Streets Gap financing loan to the Cultural Wellness Center and approving the multi-jurisdictional agreement with Hennepin County. That completes my presentation. Happy to stand for any questions and also have a representative from the applicant here.
Well, we would love to give the applicant an opportunity to say something if he would choose, but you don't have to, but you're welcome to. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, but thank you, committee.
Exactly.
This is exciting to be here and great to see all of you. Actually, it's great to see friends. So it's a pleasure to be here. I think the big thing that I would love to share is that this investment is a catalyst investment. The project and the name of Dreamland actually is a nod to Anthony B. Cassius, who was an African American who moved here as a 13-year-old after the destruction of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, and began a life in Minneapolis. And one of the first things he did as an adult in 1937 was open a business called Dreamland Cafe. In his autobiography, he specifically speaks to the idea of opening a business that those young hotheads could conspire to fight systems of oppression for the cost of a soda. And so we really nod to that idea of Dreamland on 38th and this investment as also really invigorating 38th Street as an African-American legacy cultural district, which is another thank you in terms of the work the City Council has done to making that designation. And we see this as really critically important for the revitalization of 38th Street, not at 38th and 3rd, but along 38th Street, all the way to George Floyd Square. And ultimately, it leads to economic vitality with a commitment to social justice. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, doing all of this work to be here today. Are there any other comments from the audience? If not, I'm happy to call on anyone who would like to comment or move approval. Councilmember Ellison?
Definitely happy to comment. I know this is on the far side of the city, but Anthony Taylor does a lot of work on the north side, and as far as I know that the north side kind of gets thought of as like the black geography of the city, but as you said, there's a long legacy of black people living all across the metro and certainly all across Minneapolis, and so I'm happy to move approval of this, and I'm really excited to see this coming, and I think that's the exact kind of work and economic development that we need to see along our corridor. So thank you.
Further comments or questions? Councilmember Chavez, followed by Councilmember Payne. Aren't you going to want to be on the committee now, Councilmember? It's kind of fun.
It is. I want to welcome and congratulate Mr. Taylor for all his great work on the 38th Street. And let's just thank our CPED staff for their commitment to the 38th Street Thrive Plan. And I think this is one part of that plan and the work that we're doing to bring back the vitality to this corridor of the African American legacy and history and respecting that. So just honored to be a part of this.
Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Full disclosure, I was working with the Cultural Wellness Center way at the beginning of the concept of this idea, and it just funny coincidence that today was the day that I had a quasi-judicial hearing for my ward, and this was on the agenda, so I'm just really glad that I could be here and just kind of wanted to acknowledge the amount of time it takes to do this type of deep community investment and the kind of leadership Anthony has when it comes to this work. So I'm just really glad that I was able to be here for this.
Thank you for being here. And on Councilmember Ellison's motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimously approved. Seeing no further business before us and without objection, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Voters in each ward elect one of its residents to be a council member to represent their interests on the city council. And when they get on the city council, council members do a lot of their work here in the council chamber. It's where they take on issues affecting the city, consider proposals and new ordinances, approve projects, and make other decisions to govern the city. Those actions get done using the council's system